Well, good afternoon, everyone. So nice to see you here. Thank you for coming back to the University Religious Center. We're in the fishbowl, and if any of you are new here, you can probably guess why we call it that. Everyone can see us, yeah. Well, we're here today for another enriching session of What Matters to Me and Why. I'm Vanessa Gomez-Brake, the Senior Associate Dean of Religious and Spiritual Life here at USC, and I'm delighted to have you all here at the Religious Center. As we begin today, I'd like to wish everyone a joyful and meaningful Sukkot. It's a special time of gathering and reflection for the Jewish people, and it's going on for, I think, the next 5 days. It started yesterday or Monday night. The Hindu holiday of Diwali is also just around the corner, so may all your homes be filled with warmth and light, and may you and your families find peace, prosperity, happiness, and health this season. Here at USC, we're also observing fall break. Many of my students who are not here, even today, though it begins tomorrow. So I hope all of you can enjoy a break from the normal campus grind these next few days. So this school year, we're actually celebrating the 25th anniversary of this speaker series. The What Matters to Me and Why series has offered the Trojan family a creative solution to an important challenge in our university setting. And that is how we often separate our intellectual lives from our personal lives and our spiritual dimensions. So rather than lecturing solely on their academic expertise, their work, or their research, our speakers in this series open up about their values, their beliefs, and the motivations that have shaped their lives. So I'm excited that a longtime fan of the series, Paul Kovich, is today's featured speaker. I think many of us know him. He's been a regular attendee of these events throughout the years, and we're pleased to have him today sharing his life journey with us. So once a month, during this Wednesday lunch hour, we come together to listen deeply to these reflections. But before we get started, let me just tell you a few highlights of a few upcoming events. For those of you who have not hung out at the Religious Center before, every Tuesday we have what we call Jubilee Cafe. It offers free vegan meals here in the URC courtyard, which is accompanied by Jubilee Stage. And what happens on the Jubilee Stage is featured performances from Trojan talent. And so we get students of every major and background who perform music for us right here in the courtyard, as long as the weather is good. Let's see. Oh yeah, so speaking of Diwali, because the reservation process here at USC is pretty difficult, we're gonna be celebrating on November 1st, a couple weeks after the actual holiday itself. But if y'all wanna have a good time with dance, music, some good food, and some ritual, that's gonna take place Sunday night, November 1st, and we'll be in the TCC ballroom that evening. And perhaps most importantly, I want to tell you to come back here on November 12th. We're going to celebrate 25 years of What Matters to Me and Why. And you can join us in the courtyard for a reception featuring past speakers, as well as a video montage of highlights from over the 25 years. It's sure to be a good time, and both Deans of Religious Life, past and present, will be here to help us celebrate. All right, that's it for my announcements, other than if you're gonna eat your potato chips, I invite you to open them now. Yes. Okay. Well, I invite you all to listen deeply to today's speaker and consider asking a question during our Q&A period at the end. We'll reserve about 5 or 10 minutes so you can ask Paul some direct questions. At this time, I'd like to invite Kiki Miller to the podium. Kiki is an advisor at the Dornsife School, their Department for Political Science and International Relations. She is also an active member of USC's Trojan Church, which meets in this same room every Sunday night at 7 p.m. And of course, Kiki is a close friend of the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, as well as a close friend of today's speaker. So she'll be welcoming Paul to the stage. So let's give it up for Kiki.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiki. Thank you, Vanessa. I've been a political science academic advisor for 8 years now here at USC. I first met Paul in 2017 when I was beginning my first full-time position in education, and Paul was getting ready to celebrate his 40th anniversary as the political science academic advisor. He spent a total of 41 years in the same role, in the same department, and I quickly fell in love with the role. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, am I going to be Paul? Is Paul my life flashing before my eyes? I thought of that often, and people would ask me, like, what do you see as your next steps? And I'm like, well, Paul. How naive I was to think that I could ever come close. Paul is a phenomenon. He is truly unreal. There should be a master class in how to Paul, and we would all fail. He was a tireless and passionate employee of this university. He is a curious and adventurous world traveler, and he is a loyal and wonderful, wonderful friend. And I'm going to speak briefly on those three aspects. So as an advisor, Paul loved this job, and he loved the people at this job. I have never heard Paul say a negative or frustrated word about someone at this school, student, colleague, or otherwise. So that right there disqualifies me as the next Paul, right? I will forever be grateful to Paul for having allowed me to begin my career in education next to someone who loved it so much. He continues to engage on campus. He continues to remember and follow and support the students that he graduated. As an adventurer, 60 movies or documentaries, 187 lectures or symposiums, 94 classical concerts or opera, 60 other concerts, 70 festivals or parties, 51 sporting events, 22 theater or performing arts events, 56 art galleries, museums, 23 religious services, and 6 trips to Chicago, Milwaukee, Ventura, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Laguna Beach, and Las Vegas. All of that is written on this Post-it note that Paul gave me that is titled Paul Kovich 2024 Activities. Gives me one every year, yes. No one can keep up with this man. I took Paul to Disneyland for his 75th birthday. We got there when it opened. We left after fireworks, and I literally could not keep up with him. If it was up to him, we would have shut the whole park down if I could hang, and I couldn't. I want to start a social media page for Paul called Paul Does It All, but he won't let me. So as a friend, how lucky am I to be one of Paul's best friends? To be invited in his overflowing life, to experience his joy and excitement every day. I've made some jokes here about how I can never be as great as Paul, and the truth is, he's never asked me to. Even in our deep disagreements and differences, he is kind and accepting, and he shows up anyway. There is no replacing Paul Kovich. The best we can do is learn from him and be inspired by him. I want to emphasize how fortunate all of us are to hear from Paul today. Paul is 77 years old, and his life is more full than anyone I know. Everyone can learn something from Paul. I feel honored to share my dear friend Paul with you all here today. So ladies and gentlemen, Paul Kovich.
Thank you, Kiki, for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life. I grew up in Chicago, lived the first 29 years in Chicago, went to school there, University of Illinois, Chicago, got a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, stayed on for another year in graduate school, and that was a very meaningful year. One of my professors decided to run for alderman against the very powerful Daley machine. So it was more than just theory in politics. I got to practice politics. It was very tough to beat the Daley machine, but I really hated plantation politics, the corruption that was going on in government, and it was not very easy to beat the Daley machine. I think he controlled like 47 of the 50 wards. and it was a district in Lakeview. I worked a district. They gave me a district on the west side, which was a very heavily machine district. Along the lakefront, more independents vote for independence against the machine. But I had a very tough district, a district that normally would go maybe 100 votes for the machine candidate. And I carried that precinct by 21 votes. And my professor won the election for alderman in Chicago. And he was actually reelected as well, served 8 years in that job. And I was fortunate that he cited me in his book as one of the persons that helped him win that campaign. There were a lot of people that did, but I was really proud to be part of that campaign. After I graduated, I got hired in the Governor's Office of Human Resources in the state of Illinois, working to monitor and support anti-poverty agencies. It was a very meaningful job. Probably the most important thing that I did was towards the end of that job, where the federal government was trying to close down an anti-poverty agency in Elgin, Illinois. And my colleague and I served as quasi-legal representatives to support them and to try to keep them open. If that agency was closed, a lot of poor people would have really suffered. And that was probably my greatest accomplishment in that job. We won that case, and the agency stayed open. They even offered me the job as executive director after that, but that was not the right job for me. I didn't think that was the right thing to take, but it was really impressive that I was able to help keep that agency open. Shortly after that, I lost my job. The governor that hired me lost his election, and as usual in politics, the new governor eventually let everybody go. And so I was out of a job. This was 1974. It was not a depression, but it was very tough times during the 74, 75, 76. I was actually out of work for 2.5 years. I couldn't find any work in Chicago, so I said, okay, it's 1976. Let me try something different. So I decided to go down to Florida. Maybe I'd find something there. Nope, couldn't find anything there, but I enjoyed Miami and Miami Beach for a little while. And I moved to Washington, D.C. for 3 months. Lived close to the White House. I remember it was the Allen Lee Hotel. I'm sure it's not there anymore, but when I wasn't looking for work, it was because it was the bicentennial, there was a really great folk festival going on, and I would go to that almost every day when I wasn't looking for work. So I enjoyed Washington, D.C. And I spent 7 months, actually, in 1976 going up and down the East Coast, Florida, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Boston, New York, Philadelphia. And I returned back to Chicago, trying to look for work again. I volunteered in another campaign in an even more difficult district, in the Uptown district of Chicago. We were fighting the machine again. And I had a really tough district, a district that oftentimes would maybe go for 200 votes plus for the machine candidate. I wound up losing that precinct by 1 vote, but it was still a major gain. And my candidate won that election as well. So I was really persona non grata with the political machine in Chicago. And after a while, I couldn't find any work in Chicago. I said, all right, let me try Los Angeles. Maybe that will work out. I had an aunt and uncle here. And so I was looking for a job. I applied to several places. One was, of course, right here at the University of Southern California. And fortunately, this is before the internet, before they published jobs. They called me and said, we want you to apply for this job. There were 2 candidates for the job of Undergraduate Advisor in the Department of Political Science. One of the applicants was a graduate student, and she had very good qualifications. And then there was me, but fortunately, they offered me a job. So I came to California. I had 3 goals in mind. I wanted to get a good job. I wanted to drive a nice car. And I wanted to live in a really nice apartment. Well, first thing was a job. Hey, I got hired, but the job didn't pay much. It was on soft money, funded through the city of Los Angeles for a year. Who knows how long that job would have lasted, but I said, all right, it's a job I'm going to enjoy. It's something in my field. Maybe I'll find something else if the job doesn't last. And I also realized, when I think of other people, families struggling to breadwinners working 2-3 jobs, the husband, the wife, kids, that they're really struggling. And at least I've got a job. I'm really happy about that. So the first guideline of my life that I learned is to be grateful for what you have. Do not be disappointed in what you don't have. The second thing I said, I wanted to get a really good car. Well, I had driven an old car that was beat up and wasn't good anymore. Fortunately, I was at USC and I was able to go through the USC Credit Union, and I was able to purchase a Chevy Chevette, a subcompact car. They do not make cars that small anymore. No power steering, no power brakes, no air conditioning, no FM radio. But it was my car, and at least I had a car. I realized there's a lot of other people out there that are driving old, beat-up cars, and a lot of people that don't have cars at all. They have to take public transportation. So again, I was really grateful for what I had. I wasn't disappointed in what I didn't have. Getting a good apartment. Well, I couldn't afford much, so what did I wind up getting? A one-room bachelor apartment. At least it was in a good area. It was in the Palms area near Culver City. This place had no bedroom, no kitchen facilities. Did have a nice bathroom and a pretty big walk-in closet. And at least I had a roof over my head and it was a place I can afford and live in. So I realized there's a lot of families out there that are struggling to make ends meet, and they're living in crowded conditions. And even worse, there's a lot of people living on the street that don't have anywhere to live. So again, I was very grateful for what I had. I wasn't disappointed in what I did not have. I had the job here at USC for 41 years, and probably the best thing was working with all the students on the one-to-one basis. And what I enjoy nowadays and have for past years is to run into these former students of mine anywhere, on the street, and a football game, sometimes all around the world. I even served on a jury with one of my students. And so I'm going to tell you a story of one of the students that I ran into in Santa Monica. I was just walking on the street, this is several years ago, and all of a sudden I hear someone yelling in the distance, "Hey, Kovich!" Oh, someone's calling me. Who in the heck is this? And I look across the street, one of my former students, an African-American student, who called me over. He was with his wife and 2 kids. He turns to them and introduces me and said, "I want you to meet Mr. Kovich. He was my advisor in political science, and without his help, I don't think I would have graduated." Well, I think he was exaggerating. He was a good student, but he was a transfer student. He came from a community college. He did struggle his first semester, but did very well after that. And I learned that day that he went on to law school, wound up getting a job as a public defender for the city of Los Angeles, and that was really a great moment. I was really grateful, and really meant a lot to me that, really mattered a lot to me that he would call me over and yell across the street just to make sure he would introduce me to his wife and kids. Tell you another story of a student. This is a female student. She loved USC her whole life. It was her goal to always go to USC. The summer before she started, she was partying with a group of her girlfriends. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. She got involved in a gang warfare that was going on where she was. She was shot and paralyzed. Very tragic. She became a paraplegic. It took her a little while just to get ends meet. She was able to come back to USC. She was in a wheelchair. The only way she could get around was by using her chin to guide her around. She had someone helping her take notes. Her mother would be with her on occasion. And she would come in for advisement a lot, and I would certainly encourage her, give her encouragement. She also started a foundation for disabled people and got to learn a lot about that. And she was certainly inspiration to me. So she was getting ready to graduate. It was her senior year, but there was sort of troubled times. Unfortunately, her mother passed away during her senior year, and she was struggling with her last course that she was having trouble passing. What was it? Spanish 3. Now, let me tell you, this was a disabled student who didn't even have to take foreign language, but she didn't want to get out of that requirement. She was determined to finish that language requirement. And she finally did. She got a D in the course, but she was there, and she passed it, and she was ready to graduate. And there she was. I'll never forget graduation day. She's the first one in line up on her wheelchair, going up there with her chin on the lever. She's the first one up there on getting her diploma, and that was really something to see. That really mattered to me. I'm going to tell you about a neighbor of mine who went through tragic times. She lost her job, became homeless. But I would still visit her. Eventually, she was able to get a van, at least live in her van. I would visit her, and we would go out once in a while. I would take her to basketball games at USC or sometimes a concert. My friends would see her. I mean, obviously, she didn't have great clothes or didn't look the best, and they were saying, "What are you doing with this person? Why would you even want to be associated with her?" But she was a neighbor. I couldn't abandon someone like that. Remember one day visiting her in her van. She calls me over and she says, "Paul, I want to tell you something. Thank you very much for being my friend. In fact, you're the only friend I have. And if it wasn't for you, I'd probably be dead by now." Boy, that really affected me, really mattered to me, and I was determined she could be my friend as long as she wanted to be. I'll tell you a story about my dad. I would go back to Chicago every year in the summertime. But that particular year, the White Sox were doing really well. I'm a big White Sox fan. I thought maybe they'd make the World Series. So I bought a ticket to Chicago to go back in October. And as usual, the White Sox faded. They didn't even make the playoffs. But I had this plane ticket. I said, all right, I can go back, visit friends, and visit my dad. It was a Friday afternoon, I was going to spend the whole day with him. The last several years, his cognitive abilities weren't great. He certainly knew everybody, and he recognized everybody. He wasn't very conversive, and he would repeat things once in a while. That particular day was really an amazing day. He was really sharp that day, and we had a wonderful conversation. He talked to me, asked me all sorts of questions about my life and what I'm doing, stuff he hadn't asked me in like 10 years or so, and it was really wonderful in that conversation, being with my dad that year. It was also a Friday, so he was living in an assisted living place, and we were going to have dinner with a group of people, and it was Sabbath dinner. So I remember going with him for dinner, chopped liver, matzo ball soup, brisket, great dinner, and I enjoyed that with him. And that Friday was even more special because once a month there would be a religious service. A cantor would come to the assisted living place and conduct a service. And so I went with my dad, of course, and I'm praying and I'm getting involved in it like I always do. And towards the end of the service, I'm standing up, davening, praying. And he's still in his wheelchair. I sit down and he turns to me, he's got a tear in his eye, slaps me on my knee and says, "Son, I'm really proud of you." He was proud to see that I was continuing the tradition of our forefathers, following the Jewish religion. And that really mattered to me. That was a day that wasn't even supposed to happen, but it did. We had a great conversation, a wonderful dinner, and a very meaningful religious service. And that day mattered even more to me because, as it turned out, that was the last time I got to see my dad alive. 3 months later, he passed away at 95 years old. What else matters to me? A couple of things that I'll mention. One is sports, and another one is travel. Sports. I've gotten to see all my Chicago teams win a national or world championship, and not only see them win, but actually be at the game where they won the championship or part of a series, going to a game in the series where they won the championship. The Chicago Bulls won 6 championships under Michael Jordan. The very first one was right here in Los Angeles. I went to one game in Chicago at the United Center, 2 games at the Fabulous Forum, and they won their very first title. They won 5 others. I went to several other games during those years as well. Chicago Blackhawks won 3 Stanley Cups, I think in the 2010 decade. And the very first one was against the Philadelphia Flyers. I got to go to 2 games there in Chicago. I would come in for that at the Chicago Stadium, and that was exciting to see. Soccer team, the Chicago Fire, the very first year, played for the MLS Cup right here in Los Angeles at the Rose Bowl. I went to that game, and they won that game. Chicago Bears, one of the greatest football teams in NFL history, the 1985 Bears. They played in the Super Bowl in 1986 in New Orleans. I flew down to New Orleans, got a ticket outside. They won really big, great victory, and was really happy to see the Bears win their Super Bowl. That was their only Super Bowl title so far. And probably my biggest thrill in sports was in 2005 when the Chicago White Sox won the World Series. I'd done all sorts of trips along the East Coast to see them play during that year in New York, Baltimore, Washington. And then even right here in Los Angeles, they clinched the pennant. I went to all 3 games at Angel Stadium when they won all those games, clinched the pennant. Flew back to Chicago for the World Series. I could not get into game 1, and it was so tough to get into game 2. I didn't think I was going to get in, but 5 minutes before the game started, someone sold me a ticket. Very high price, but it was worth going to that game. And I'll never forget that game. It was one of the most exciting games I've ever seen. My hero, Paul Konerko, hit a grand slam home run in the game. The game went into extra innings. Scott Podsednik hit a home run, a walk-off home run in extra innings, the only home run he hit all season. The White Sox went on to win that World Series 4-0. They won in the playoffs. They were 11-1, one of the greatest teams in sports history, 11-1 in the postseason. They're awful now, but they were great then. I really enjoyed that. Travel. That's another thing that's very important to me. I do a lot of traveling. I've gone to over 70 countries, visited all 7 continents. When I landed in Antarctica in 2011, that was my 7th continent. I did 9 landings, went south of the Antarctic Circle, and that was a real thrill. I mean, anyone could do what I did over a 50-year period. You can't do it that quickly, but over 50 years, if you really set your mind to it, you can do it. And that was really important to me to do that. In 2023, I went to Petra in Jordan, one of the greatest archaeological sites in the world, maybe the greatest. And when I got to Petra, I fulfilled another dream of seeing all 7 major wonders of the world. And so traveling has certainly been very important to me. I feel really grateful for my life. I go back, think about it. Sometimes I think I'm almost living a dream. I would never have expected the life I've lived. I think about other people and the tough times they're having and feeling so grateful for the life that I have, especially all the people struggling around the world that don't have food to eat, that don't have a place to live. And ironically, just last night, PBS Frontline had a new program, Being Poor in America. I highly recommend it. You watch that program, you'll feel grateful for your life, and hopefully you'll be able to empathize with the suffering and hardships that people have, even in this country, not just around the world. So I am grateful for my life, grateful for everything that's happened. I guess to summarize, the 3 most important things in terms of guidelines, once again: be grateful for what you have. Don't be disappointed in what you don't have. never lose that little kid inside of you. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned that. Never lose that little kid inside of you. That's very important. I try to act like a kid sometimes. I enjoy that, the excitement of doing things like a kid. Every day I have a bowl of ice cream and I still lick that plate clean. I don't do that in a restaurant, but I still do that at home in my apartment. The third guideline that I have is whatever you do, do it with a passion. That's important. Do it with a passion. And that's really important to me. I get excited about each day. I try to do as much as I can. I look at the day. What can I do this day? How much can I get out of it? It has to be something meaningful, whether it's a lecture or a movie or a sporting event. And that's how I live my life. I'm really proud of it, and I'm really happy about it, and don't think I would have traded anything that I've done. So I want to thank you for your kind attention, and now you know what matters to me and why. Thank you.
All right, folks, it's your turn. I know many of you are fans of Paul, as I am, and so we learned a lot today about how you live your life and the really amazing things you've done. And so let's open it up for Q&A. And so if you have a question, I just ask that you, if you are able, stand up, tell us your name so we may know you, and yeah, and then you can ask your question. Go for it.
Hello, my name is Scott Linus. Hi, Paul. I really enjoyed the talk a lot. When you, early on in your talk, you mentioned the governor of Illinois.
Yeah.
And I was curious who that was.
It's Governor Ogilvy. He was a very popular governor, one of the few governors that wasn't indicted. The governor that was elected was indicted, Dan Walker. He served a jail term. I think there was a period of 4 governors out of 7 that were indicted and convicted, both Democrats and Republicans.
And then after Ogilvy was?
Dan Walker.
Okay, and
He was the one that finally let me go, and he served some jail time.
Thank you.
He deserved it. Any other questions? I finished too early.
No, you're fine. I've got a question. I think there was a thread going through your many stories that really talked about how much you care about other people. And I'm curious because just knowing that you're Jewish, when I went to seminary, I got to learn a bit about Judaism, and something that stood out to me was the idea of tikkun olam. That means to repair the world. And I'm curious, in your Jewish upbringing and in your life, if that or other teachings from your tradition sort of guided you in this way, because knowing your neighbor who's living in the van, the students you cared for, I could see that thread through most every story you told today.
Yeah, I had a pretty strong religious upbringing. Go to services with my parents. We wouldn't go all the time, but we'd do every major holiday. We would celebrate Passover together and some of the other major holidays. And yeah, we learned that's part of the Jewish tradition, to give of yourself and to help others. I give to as many charities as I possibly can now, and help when I can. And it's very important to see what's going on out there and being empathetic to others. Yes. Kiki, yes.
So, as I mentioned, I was a new advisor when I met you, and having you as a all-knowing oracle on this campus was such a benefit to me. So there are some newer advisors in the room. What would you summarize a couple of tips for them as new advisors here and as just participants on the campus?
Just make sure you listen very carefully to students, understand what they're saying, try to empower them. Let them make the final decision, but do the best you can. Encourage them, try to help them if you can, get them scholarships or let them know about opportunities that are out there so they can succeed on their own, and follow up on that. Those are some of the things I would recommend.
Bergen alumni. Great talk, Paul, thank you. Just curious, what are some of the countries that you visited that you kind of were most memorable for you?
I'd say probably the greatest trip I had, I went to Peru and Ecuador on the same trip. Got to see Machu Picchu and the Galapagos Islands at the same time. And I was up at Machu Picchu. I actually climbed, there are 2 mountains. I climbed both of them. The only reason I was able to climb the second mountain, I got real lucky. There was a train strike that happened after we got to Machu Picchu, so we had to stay an extra half a day. But I remember going up that mountain, the high mountain that you see in pictures all the time, sometimes crawling through small areas and following people. I got up to the top of that mountain, looked down, I said, I really did this? This is an absolutely amazing view. I mean, it was that, and also when I was in Petra, the high view going up to the monastery. And then, of course, the Galapagos Islands, part of that same tour when I went to Machu Picchu. And so many fascinating things to see in the Galapagos that you never see anywhere else. The most unusual terrain. It was a 7-day cruise, and got to go to 5 or 6 different islands, and enjoyed seeing the giant tortoises and everything. And it was, that one trip was probably the greatest.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your perspectives, and especially about being thankful for the experiences that you have, the time that we have, also for being very passionate. And one of the things that I really admire about you is your willingness to show up, to physically be present. I think all of us have seen you at different events, many of the events that I've put on, you're there, and we really appreciate that. Do you have any advice? Because it seems like these days it's harder for people to physically be present. We question about the events that we do because they're just, students and staff, faculty are so programmed. How is it that you're able to participate, and not just in your retirement or because you might have more time now, but just, I think it's a mindset as well. Is there any advice that you can share?
Well, when I worked, I would go to luncheon events all the time. I was still able to do that. Actually, I haven't changed a lot. I'm able to do a little bit more, and I have more time to do things. You certainly want to check the USC calendar. When you go to events, try to get on their mailing list so they'll send you stuff so you know what's happening. I almost never have to buy lunch anymore. And there's so much going on. I mean, I get invigorated by all these events. I mean, I'm not just going to events just to go. I mean, you're not going to see me have a free lunch at a science event. I won't go to those. But other events that I really enjoy, I go to them. And you do have to spend time. And sometimes it's deciding which event to go to. There's 2-3 events at the same time sometimes. But the USC calendar, the humanities calendar is a really good calendar now that's out at USC. I really like that. And as I said, I'm on the mailing list for a lot of other organizations. I'm also a subscriber to Los Angeles Philharmonic, Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra. I'm on lists for those, and I go. And sometimes those tickets aren't very expensive either. There's special deals on some of the apps. Today Tix is a really good one. I'm a senior, so I get senior discounts. Students get discounts also. So living in Los Angeles is great. I mean, there's so many free and inexpensive things to do here. That's what's really wonderful about Los Angeles, besides the weather, which you can't beat anywhere. I don't like Chicago winters. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, I think I have one closing question for you. Knowing that you worked here at USC for 41 years. 41 years. I think I misspoke earlier. And this speaker series is only 25 years old. So I'm curious, do you remember the first What Matters to Me and Why that you attended because I can only assume that perhaps you weren't at the first one. I've heard that it was on the grass next to Bogart, the first iteration, but had you thought
I
back?
probably wasn't on the grass in the first, but I know I came to the very first year because I knew Susan Lemley very well. She was actually the rabbi at Hillel at the time.
Right.
Or she was, and then she was
You're
hired for
Our first
for
student
campus
religious
chaplain,
life
yeah.
Was
Rabbi Susan Lemley, yeah.
Yes.
And so I started coming the very first year. I may not have come to all of them. I don't remember sitting on the grass, but I do remember going inside to a lot of the programs, and I would attend most of them, not all of them, but most of them,
Got it.
over the last 25 years.
Well, that's amazing.
Especially the first year.
You probably have the best record than anyone at USC then, is going to be my guess. So, well, thank you everyone for being here. On behalf of the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, I want to thank Paul Kovich for being an amazing man and leading an amazing life. And this is just one memento. Perhaps you can take on your next trip to journal. We already know what matters
I
to
do
you in
write
life,
it,
but
every
you
day I
can
write down what I do.
document your next adventure. So let's give it up for Paul.
Thank you very much.